The morning was cold and gloomy, reflecting the state of mind of Augusto, a renowned businessman who carried a burden that not even his fortune could alleviate. His only daughter, Isadora, just 16 years old, was facing a cruel battle with cystic fibrosis, a disease that left her frail and confined to bed. Before leaving for work, Augusto entered his daughter's room and, with a heavy heart, leaned over to kiss her forehead. "Be well, my love. I'm going to work, but I promise I'll be back soon so we can spend some time together." Isadora tried to smile, but was soon overcome by a coughing fit that stained the sheets with drops of blood. With his chest tight, Augusto left the room, struggling to hold back the tears. Outside, the light rain seemed to share his melancholy. He walked to his car, but the scene of his daughter coughing wouldn't leave his mind. Despite all his success in business, life had been cruel. He had lost his wife, Camila, in a devastating accident years earlier, and had since devoted himself exclusively to his daughter, who was now struggling to survive. That day, unable to focus on work, Augusto decided to go for a walk during his lunch break. The rain had eased to a light drizzle as he walked aimlessly. It was then that something unexpected caught his attention. Sitting on the sidewalk, soaked and vulnerable, was a young woman with a lost look and a tired expression. Augusto hesitated, but something deep in his soul compelled him to act. He approached and offered his umbrella, saying, "You seem to need this more than I do." The young woman, who introduced herself as Rafaela, looked up in surprise and smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir. This rain caught me off guard." Augusto, impressed by the kindness in her eyes, felt comfortable sharing his pain. He told her about Isadora and, to his surprise, Rafaela showed unusual empathy. Touched by the difficult story of the young woman, who had been living on the streets since the death of her parents, Augusto made an unexpected proposal. "Why don't you come to my house? My daughter needs a friend, and maybe you'll find a new opportunity too." Rafaela, hesitant, accepted. There was something in Augusto's sincerity that inspired confidence. Without knowing it, they were both about to embark on a journey that would change their lives forever. Augusto opened the door to the mansion with Rafaela by his side, the sound of the rain still echoing in the background. "Make yourself at home. This is your home now, at least for a while," he said with a gentle smile. Rafaela, shy, looked around, admiring the grandeur of the residence, but without losing her humility. "Thank you, Mr. Augusto. I promise I won't cause any problems." Dona Teresa, Augusto's mother and Isadora's grandmother, was sitting in the living room and raised her eyebrows when she saw the stranger enter. Before she could ask, Augusto stepped forward. "Mom, this is Rafaela. She's going to be staying with us for a few days. I think she could be a good friend to Isadora and needs a place to stay." Dona Teresa, despite her surprise, trusted her son's good heart and accepted the situation. Observing Rafaela carefully, the matriarch noticed something special about her. "Welcome, my dear. I'll prepare something for you to feel at home." Rafaela was taken to a guest room, where she found clean clothes that Dona Teresa had set aside for her. After a hot bath, the young woman felt a relief she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Thank you, ma'am," she said, moved. "I don't know how to repay such kindness." Later, Augusto decided to introduce Rafaela to Isadora. He knocked on the bedroom door and entered cautiously. "Daughter, there's someone I'd like you to meet." Rafaela entered timidly, and the two girls' eyes met. Isadora, initially reserved, smiled slightly. "Hi, Rafaela. My father told me about you." Rafaela smiled back. "I hope we can be friends." Augusto realized it was best to leave them alone to get to know each other better. "Talk a little? I'm sure you'll get along," he said, leaving the room. As the minutes passed, the two began to talk, exchanging stories and discovering unexpected similarities. Isadora's laughter, muffled for so long, echoed through the hallway, filling the house with a forgotten energy. Dona Teresa, who had been listening to the girls' conversation in the hallway, felt a glimmer of hope grow inside her. Something about Rafaela seemed to light up the room. For the first time in months, the heavy silence of the mansion was broken by young voices and happy laughter. Augusto, upon hearing the sound, smiled discreetly. He He didn't know exactly what was coming, but for the first time in a long time, he felt he had made the right decision. Thus, Rafaela began to change not only the routine of the house, but also the souls of those who lived there. The days began to pass, and Rafaela's presence transformed the atmosphere of the mansion. Previously silent and heavy, the house was now filled with laughter and conversation. Isadora seemed to find in Rafaela a friend she didn't know she needed. The two spent hours together, talking, watching movies, and even inventing little games. Her grandmother, Dona Teresa, watched in wonder. "This girl has brought light to our home, Augusto," she said one evening as they drank tea in the living room. He agreed, although he still didn't fully understand the strength of the connection Rafaela had with her daughter. One afternoon, Rafaela was in the garden picking flowers to decorate Isadora's room. Dona Teresa watched from afar when something strange happened. The flowers, wilted by time and the cold, began to revive, gaining life and color again. The lady, astonished, walked over to Rafaela. "How is that possible? The flowers were almost dead." Rafaela just smiled, with an enigmatic sparkle in her eyes. "Nature has mysterious ways of reminding us that life is full of possibilities, Dona Teresa," she said softly, returning to her work. Meanwhile, Isadora's health showed signs of improvement. Although the doctors could not explain the reason, Augusto and Dona Teresa noticed that the coughing fits were less frequent and the girl's disposition grew stronger every day. Rafaela always seemed to be by her side in the most difficult moments, encouraging her with sweet words and genuine affection. "Dad, I feel different. Rafaela has something special, something that makes me believe that I can get better," Isadora said one night during dinner. Augusto smiled, but felt a hint of curiosity and restlessness growing inside him. Rafaela did, in fact, have a different aura, something almost indescribable, but that everyone could feel. At another moment, Isadora, encouraged by Rafaela, decided to try something she had not done in months: sit up on her own in bed. With some effort, she managed. Tears streamed down the girl's face as Rafaela held her hands tightly. "I told you that you were stronger than you think," Rafaela whispered. Isadora's improvement was visible, but also inexplicable. Augusto, who always sought rational answers, could not avoid the questions that arose in his mind. "Who is Rafaela? How is she helping my daughter in a way that not even the best treatments could?" As time went by, not only did the house change, but Augusto and Dona Teresa also began to realize that Rafaela was no ordinary young woman. The changes in Isadora and the positive impact that Rafaela had on their lives were evident, but the mystery behind her presence continued to grow, leaving the family increasingly intrigued. While everyone enjoyed the new hope that Rafaela brought, no one imagined that even more extraordinary events were to come. The weeks passed, and Isadora's recovery continued to surprise everyone. Her coughing fits had almost disappeared, her skin had a healthy glow, and even her appetite had returned. Rafaela was always nearby, encouraging her friend with words of encouragement. To Augusto, the miracle he had prayed for so much seemed to be happening right before his eyes, but he could not ignore the mystery surrounding Rafaela. Dona Teresa, in turn, began to observe events that defied any logical explanation. One afternoon, while Rafaela was helping Isadora to bed, the lady saw something that left her paralyzed. Rafaela gently placed her hand on Isadora's arm, and the girl, who until then seemed tired and out of breath, took a deep breath and smiled. "I feel so light now," said Isadora with a sparkle in her eyes. Dona Teresa remained silent, but in her heart a certainty began to emerge. Rafaela had a gift beyond human comprehension. Another scene that marked the family took place in the garden. Rafaela was again picking flowers to decorate the house when a bird, which seemed to be injured, landed near her. Augusto, watching from afar, saw Rafaela approach the little animal, whisper something while holding it, and then release it. The bird flew away, apparently healed. "I must be imagining things," Augusto muttered to himself, trying to shake off the discomfort he felt. One night, while they were gathered in the living room, Augusto decided to share his doubts with Dona Teresa. "Mom," Rafaela brought something inexplicable to our home. Isadora is getting better, and I am grateful for that, but who is this girl? How can she do things that defy all logic? Donna Teresa, despite also having her doubts, answered calmly. Maybe she is an answer to your prayers, Augusto. Not everything needs an explanation. Sometimes the miracle isn't accepting what we have been given. Isadora, upon hearing the conversation, joined them with a smile. Rafaela is my best friend. I know she is special, but it doesn't matter where she came from. She brought me back to life. Augusto couldn't help but smile at his daughter's happiness, but the restlessness remained in his heart. The next day, an event sealed the mystery surrounding Rafaela. Before Augusto left for work, Rafaela, with an urgent tone in her voice, warned him, "Mr. Augusto, please don't take the main route today. Take another route." The intensity in her gaze made him hesitate. "Why, Rafaela? Did something happen?" She simply replied, "Trust me. It's important." Even though he was intrigued, Augusto decided to follow her advice. Later, when he arrived at work, he received shocking news. A devastating accident had occurred right on the main route. A building had collapsed, causing chaos and destruction. The thought that it could have been him in the middle of that tragedy made his heart race. How did she know that? Augusto asked himself, feeling a shiver run down his spine. Rafaela seemed to know things that no one else did, and this only increased the mystery surrounding her. When he returned home that night, he was determined to understand more about Rafaela. But what he would discover in the next few hours would change his perception forever. Augusto arrived home with a restless mind, still shaken by the incident Rafaela had predicted. He parked the car and hurried into the mansion. He needed to talk to her. He needed to understand what was happening. As he climbed the stairs towards Isadora's room, he heard laughter coming from the room. He stopped for a moment to listen, feeling a mixture of relief and curiosity. Leaning against the half-open door, Augusto watched Rafaela and Isadora in a moment of pure joy. Rafaela held the girl's hands, encouraging her with gentle words. "You can do it, Isadora. Trust yourself. I'm here to help you." Isadora, hesitant, looked at Rafaela and, with effort, began to move her legs. The movements were slow and shaky, but to Augusto's surprise, she managed to sit up on the edge of the bed by herself. Augusto was paralyzed. Isadora had not been able to stand up on her own for years. Cystic fibrosis had weakened her muscles so much that even small movements were impossible. He watched in disbelief as Rafaela encouraged her daughter to take another step. "Now try to stand up, Isadora. I know you can do it," Rafaela said firmly but without losing her sweetness. With great effort and visible determination, Isadora took Rafaela's hands and began to stand up. It was as if an unknown force flowed through the young caregiver, strengthening every fiber of Isadora's body. When she finally stood up, Augusto entered the room, unable to contain his emotion. "My daughter, you're standing up," he exclaimed, tears in his eyes. Isadora, overcome with emotion, responded with a bright smile. "Dad, I never thought it was possible. Rafaela helped me. She never gave up on me." Donna Teresa, attracted by the cries of joy, entered the room and was speechless when she saw her granddaughter standing up. She came closer and hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "This is a miracle, Isadora. A true miracle." Augusto, still in shock, turned to Rafaela. "I don't know how you did it, but know that you brought something that all the treatments in the world couldn't. Hope." Rafaela, with a humble smile, replied, "I just wanted to help. Isadora has incredible strength inside her. I just encouraged her to see it." Emotion took over the family as they celebrated Isadora's progress. However, something still hung in the air. Who exactly was Rafaela? Why did her presence seem to trigger so many extraordinary events? Augusto knew he needed answers, but for now, he chose to focus on the joy of that unique moment. As everyone hugged Isadora, Rafaela took a step back, observing the scene with an enigmatic smile. Donna Teresa noticed something peculiar. Rafaela's distant gaze, as if she were seeing something beyond what the others could perceive. "Who are you, Rafaela?" thought the lady. not daring to ask out loud. That night, while Augusto tried to rest, the questions began to echo in his mind. He knew that what he had just witnessed was just the beginning of something bigger. Rafaela was there for a reason, and he needed to find out what it was. The next morning brought a renewed atmosphere to the mansion. Isadora, still euphoric about her achievement, seemed more excited than ever. "Dad, I want to try to walk more today. I feel like I can do it," she said as Augusto helped her down the stairs for the first time in years. The happiness on Isadora's face was contagious, but for Augusto, Rafaela's mystery remained like a shadow. While breakfast was being served, Donna Teresa approached Augusto with a serious tone. "We need to talk about Rafaela. I don't know who she is, but what's happening in this house is not normal." Augusto agreed, but hesitated. Rafaela had brought joy and healing to Isadora, something he had never imagined possible. Confronting her seemed wrong, but the desire for answers was growing stronger. Later, Augusto found Rafaela in the garden, picking flowers again. Determined, he approached her and started the conversation. "Rafaela, you know that we are very grateful for everything you have done for my daughter. But I need to be honest. Were you really? How did you manage to predict that accident? And how do you explain what happened to Isadora yesterday?" Rafaela looked at him calmly, as if she had already expected that question. "Mr. Augusto, I am no one special. I just try to help where I can. Sometimes there are things we feel and know, but we cannot explain." There was something in the calmness of her voice that left Augusto even more intrigued. He wanted to insist, but he realized that Rafaela was not ready to reveal more. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Isadora explored the hallways with the help of her grandmother. "Grandma, do you believe Rafaela is an angel?" she asked, her eyes shining. Donna Teresa hesitated. "I don't know, my dear, but what she has done for you is, without a doubt, something divine." The day continued with vibrant energy. Rafaela and Isadora spent more time together, strengthening their friendship. But that night, something inexplicable happened again. Augusto, while reviewing some documents in the office, heard a noise in the hallway. When he went out to check, he saw Rafaela kneeling next to Isadora, who was sleeping soundly. Rafaela's hands were lightly on the girl's chest, and a soft light seemed to emanate from her touch. Augusto remained still, his eyes wide as he tried to process what he was seeing. When Rafaela noticed his presence, she calmly got up and whispered she needed peace. "Don't worry, everything is fine now." Without saying anything else, Rafaela retreated to her room, leaving Augusto paralyzed in the hallway. That night, he was unable to sleep. The images of the soft light and Isadora's peaceful expression wouldn't leave his mind. For the first time, Augusto began to wonder if Rafaela was something much more than an ordinary young woman. Maybe Donna Teresa was right. She could be an answer to his prayers. But if that were true, what did that mean for his family? The mystery only grew, and Augusto knew he couldn't ignore what was happening. He needed answers. However, an even more surprising twist was about to happen, changing everything he believed. The next day, Augusto woke up determined. He knew that Rafaela had a greater purpose, and he wouldn't rest until he discovered what was behind her presence. As they ate breakfast, Rafaela seemed calm, as if the scene from the previous night had never happened. Augusto, however, couldn't hide his uneasiness. "Rafaela, you have been a blessing to my daughter and to our home, but I need to understand. There is something about you that defies everything I know. Please tell me, who are you really?" Her voice was firm, but filled with a mix of respect and urgency. Rafaela looked at him deeply, her eyes seeming to see beyond the surface. "Mr. Augusto, sometimes the answers we seek are not ready to be understood. I'm only here to help, and perhaps that is all you need to know for now." The answer, although enigmatic, carried a serenity that made Augusto hesitate to press her further. Meanwhile, Isadora, encouraged by her recent progress, decided to take a bold step, walking alone to the garden. With Donna Teresa watching closely, the young woman managed to cross the room and reach the balcony, her legs still trembling but full of determination. "I never thought I could do this again, Rafaela," Isadora said with tears in her eyes. You gave me hope. Rafaela smiled, holding her friend's hand. All of this was inside you, Isadora. I just showed you that it was possible. That night, yet another inexplicable event left Augusto and Dona Teresa perplexed. Rafaela asked Augusto to accompany her to the office. There, she looked at him seriously and said, "You need to understand something. Tonight, your faith will be tested. Trust what you feel, not what you see." Before Augusto could ask her what she meant, Rafaela left the room. Hours later, while Augusto was reviewing the mansion's security cameras, something surprising happened. The images showed Isadora getting out of bed and walking down the hallway alone. Augusto's heart raced. He ran to his daughter's room, but when he got there, he found Isadora fast asleep. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, confused. Dona Teresa, who was also intrigued by the events, suggested that they review older recordings. As they scrolled through the images, something even more the surprising thing was revealed. Rafaela never appeared in the footage. Every moment she was supposed to be visible showed only empty spaces. The most shocking footage was from the day Augusto brought Rafaela home. On the cameras, he appeared alone, entering the mansion and talking to the void. "This is not possible," Augusto exclaimed, a lump forming in his throat. "She was here. We saw her. We talked to her. She helped my daughter." Dona Teresa, also in disbelief, tried to process what she was seeing. "Augusto, if she doesn't appear on the cameras, what does that mean? Who or what is Rafaela?" The two were so immersed in the discovery that they didn't notice Rafaela standing at the door of the office. Calmly, she said, "Some things don't need to be explained, just felt. What matters is that you're okay now, and Isadora is recovering." Before they could say anything, Rafaela turned and walked down the hallway, her figure slowly disappearing into the darkness. Augusto and Dona Teresa ran after her, but Rafaela had completely disappeared. The mansion was silent, as if she had never been there. When Isadora learned what had happened, she cried silently, but not with sadness. "She brought me back to life. Whoever she is, Rafaela will always be with me." In the following days, the family began to realize that Rafaela was more than just an ordinary person. The questions piled up, but the answers seemed irrelevant in the face of the miracle she had performed. What remained was gratitude, hope, and the certainty that sometimes the inexplicable happens to remind us of the power of faith. After Rafaela disappeared, the mansion fell into a reflective silence. Augusto, Dona Teresa, and Isadora were full of questions, but also of deep gratitude. Isadora's recovery continued to be impressive. She could not only walk, but also run short distances around the garden, something that had previously seemed impossible. The doctors, called back to re-evaluate her, were perplexed. "Your daughter is completely out of danger," one of them said, still in disbelief. "Her lungs are functioning normally. We haven't found any signs of cystic fibrosis. This is a miracle." Augusto, with tears in his eyes, thanked the doctors, but knew that the explanation for what had happened was far beyond science. Meanwhile, Dona Teresa mentally reviewed all the moments they had lived with Rafaela. "Augusto," she said one night while they were in the living room, "Rafaela wasn't like us. She didn't need to be seen by cameras because she doesn't belong to this world. I'm sure she was an angel." Augusto, although reluctant to accept something so supernatural, couldn't find any other explanation. Isadora, for her part, seemed at peace. "Dad, it doesn't matter who she was. What matters is what she did for us. Rafaela brought me back to life, and I will never forget her." A few days later, Augusto decided to search the room where Rafaela had been. He looked for any clue that could explain her origins, but he only found the dress that Dona Teresa had given him. Inside one of the pockets, there was a folded note with delicate handwriting. On the paper, it read, "Believe in what cannot be explained. Love and faith are the most powerful forces in the universe." These words deeply moved Augusto. He kept the note in his most precious drawer, along with a photo of Isadora, smiling after taking her first steps again. For him, Rafaela was not just an angel. She was God's direct answer to his most desperate prayers. As the days went by, something extraordinary began to happen in the mansion. Neighbors, family members, and friends who visited the house said they felt a different energy in the place. "It seems like this house has been blessed," one of them commented. Augusto, although he said nothing, knew that this was true. One quiet afternoon, Isadora, now healthy and full of life, was walking through the garden when she saw something peculiar. A bird that seemed injured landed near her. She came closer, remembered what Rafaela always said about having faith, and whispered, "You're going to be okay." To her surprise, the bird rose and flew away again. Isadora smiled, feeling that Rafaela was still somehow by her side. Augusto, watching the scene from afar, felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. He realized that Rafaela hadn't disappeared. Her presence was eternalized in their hearts, in the transformation she brought to their lives, and in the faith she rekindled in their souls. Although the mysteries about Rafaela were never completely unraveled, Augusto, Isadora, and Dona Teresa learned to accept that not everything needs answers. Sometimes, miracles happen to remind us that, even in the darkest moments, light always finds a way to reach us. What Rafaela left behind was not only a physical healing, but a spiritual rebirth that would transform them forever. The days went by with a renewed atmosphere in the mansion. Isadora now lived like an ordinary young woman, full of energy and dreams for the future. Augusto, in turn, felt that his perspective on life had changed drastically. He had spent years relying only on logic and work, but Rafaela taught him that some things cannot be understood with reason. One day, during a family dinner, Isadora made an unexpected request. "Father, I think we should use our story to help other people. Rafaela brought us something precious, and I believe we can bring this light to those who are going through difficult times." Dona Teresa, always wise, agreed with a smile. "She's right, Augusto. The miracle we experience was not just for us, but so that we can spread hope." Inspired by these words, Augusto decided to create a foundation in Rafaela's memory. The goal would be to help children with serious illnesses, offering medical treatments and support to their families. He named the foundation Rafaela's Light, a tribute to the mysterious young woman who changed their lives. The initiative quickly gained recognition, and Isadora's story became an inspiration to many. As the foundation grew, unexplained events continued to occur in the mansion. One night, Augusto went to the office to retrieve the note Rafaela had left. When he opened the drawer where he kept it, he found another message that had not been there before. "The journey of faith is endless. Keep believing." He showed the message to Dona Teresa, who wiped away a tear of emotion. "She is still watching over us, Augusto. Rafaela has never completely left." This certainty filled the family's hearts with indescribable peace. On a particularly special occasion, Isadora decided to plant a garden in Rafaela's honor. She chose a corner of the property where the sunlight was strongest and planted flowers of various colors. The garden, called Rafaela's Refuge, became a place of visit for those seeking inspiration and strength. What was most surprising was that the flowers there seemed to bloom all year long, even in adverse weather, as if they carried a special touch. A few weeks later, Augusto received an unexpected call from one of the doctors who had cared for Isadora. "Mr. Augusto, something curious has happened. Since your daughter's recovery, other cystic fibrosis patients have reported inexplicable improvements. It's as if Isadora's story has triggered something extraordinary." Augusto thanked her, but was at a loss for words. Rafaela had not only transformed her family, her light was touching the world. One day, as Augusto was walking through Rafaela's garden, he felt a gentle breeze and heard the sound of laughter coming from far away. He stopped and looked around, but there was no one there. A shiver ran down his spine, but he felt no fear, only comfort. It was as if Rafaela was telling him that everything was okay. The foundation continued to grow, and the garden became a symbol of hope. Rafaela's story was told countless times, inspiring people to believe in the power of faith and love. For Augusto, Dona Teresa, and Isadora, the most important lesson was learning to accept the inexplicable and embrace the miracle of life. Rafaela's legacy was not only in Isadora's healing, but in the lasting impact she left on the hearts of all who heard her story. Even without definitive answers, the family understood that some presences are eternal, not because they are seen, but because they are felt. Years passed, and Rafaela's impact continued to live on in the family and in all those who were touched by her story. The Luz de Rafaela Foundation, created to help children with serious illnesses, not only grew, but also became a symbol of hope. Each life transformed carried a little of the light that Rafaela had left. Despite the doubts that persisted in his mind, Augusto learned to live with them. On a serene afternoon, he returned to the Refugio de Rafaela garden. He sat on the bench that overlooked the now stunning arch of flowers and gazed up at the sky. The sun was casting its last golden rays over the garden, filling the place with an almost magical luminosity. He held in his hands the note left by Rafaela, which he had read countless times. The words "believe in what cannot be explained. Love and faith are the most powerful forces in the universe," seemed to echo within him with a new meaning. For the first time, Augusto felt that he no longer needed answers. "I don't know who you were, Rafaela. Maybe I'll never know," he murmured, looking up at the sky. "But that doesn't matter anymore. You brought what we needed: hope, faith, and love. Your presence was a divine gift, and I am grateful for that." He closed his eyes and let the gentle wind caress his face, as if it were an invisible answer. When he opened his eyes once again, he felt something different. It wasn't sadness for not having all the answers, but a deep serenity. Augusto understood that some things in life are not meant to be understood, only experienced. He smiled, allowing himself to accept Rafaela's mystery as part of the beauty of everything she had left behind. That night, during the Foundation's 20th anniversary, Augusto gave his last speech as president. Rafaela came into our lives at a time when we needed it most. She brought not only healing to my daughter, but hope to all of us. Today, we celebrate something greater than a miracle. We celebrate the power of love, faith, and kindness. We don't need all the answers to believe in what is true and eternal. As he spoke, a shooting star lit up the sky, drawing emotional gasps from the crowd. Augusto looked up, feeling deep in his heart that Rafaela was still present, caring for them in a way that only the invisible can. Rafaela's story was not just about miracles, but about the transformation that occurs when we accept what we cannot understand. She taught her family and the world that not everything needs to be explained to be valuable. The love and faith she left behind transcended time, transforming lives and illuminating hearts. And so, the family moved forward, carrying Rafaela not as a mystery to be solved, but as an eternal light that would always guide them.